Hello. Okay. So welcome everybody. We'll get started in about 5 minutes. Give people a few more minutes to come in. But we'll start and end on time, I promise.
They don't have the clicker. No.
That's okay. I'll just walk back and forth. What's with all the... Did you see how the back jam, people trying to get up?
I know, right? It's because there are other people back until all of the sessions on the road finish. So if one of the sessions is running over, they'll hold everybody back.
Really?
That's what they were doing earlier.
Yeah.
Well, what do you know?
We're good, man.
But we're good.
But we'll give it to the next.
You can never have too much fun.
We can't.
I'll take it off. Oh, okay. You don't want to carry them back?
Thank you. I can put it on the
Yeah,
phone.
go ahead. Just throw it back there. I got a couple.
This is great. So you just gave a talk again?
I did, but it was like I was just a participant. It was really funny because whatever we rehearsed, they totally just winged it. So he goes, "Okay, Mark," and I'm like, "That's not my slide." So then I did it back to them. It was just funny.
Where was this?
It was for iLink, so it was over in downstairs. It was just funny though because we had totally rehearsed it, and then they changed it, and it, like I got them back. Oh, Mark, can you talk about that? And then I got this other section, and I winged it, and then I'm like, oh, hey, Frank. But it went really good. I mean, it was... Yeah, the people were cracking up. I mean, they all had a good time, and they all stayed until the very end. I thought, wow, what the hell? I'd be like, okay, I'm out of here. My feet hurt.
I know, right? Try wearing these.
You know, I did last year, and
You learned your lesson?
brutal.
Okay.
Wow, those
so
are some boots.
1 more minute.
Those are some boots.
Breath. There's another video.
20 minutes? 20 minutes?
20, depending on how long he goes.
I'll probably go faster.
I'll probably
No,
done in 20 minutes.
You go ahead, because I can speed up, slow down.
Yes, I mean,
I'm
yeah.
probably
I don't
gonna
want to
go
take more than
fast.
20 minutes, seriously.
Yeah, you don't want to be like
I think they want to talk, they want to listen to you more than me.
Sure. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Where's your mic guy?
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us at Jack B. Nimble, Mastering Process Automation with Salesforce CRM. My name is Tiffany Carruthers, and I am a Customer Success Manager at Salesforce.com. So we're really excited that you guys decided to join us this afternoon. We know that we're the last session of a very busy day. We're the only thing standing between you and tonight's festivities. We recognize that. The best thing about it being the end of the day for me is that I actually dropped my lunch in my lap today. So if anybody's wondering what balsamic vinaigrette does to silk, I can show you. But regardless, we will overlook that. Again, we're here for Jack B. Nimble, Mastering Process Automation with Salesforce CRM. You've seen our safe harbor statement today. I'm sure many of you can recite it in your sleep, so we won't spend too much time here. So what I'd like for you to think about before we get started is, maybe take a second to jot down. You guys have your Dreamforce books in front of you. You might have a napkin that you brought in with your water, or, jot down on your partner's arm next to you. What are some of the key business processes in your organization? So this might be a sales process. It might be a customer service process. But even thinking beyond those big kind of elephant in the room business processes, think about some of the ancillary business processes that maybe you're managing via spreadsheets, or a process that you're managing via email, such as a discount process. If, for instance, in order to request approval for a discount over a certain amount, you have to send an email to someone and get that approval, that's certainly an ancillary business process that's being managed outside of Salesforce. So take a second to jot those down. And as we talk through the tools that Salesforce provides for business process automation, think about how you can use those tools and apply them to the processes that you have written down. So today we have several goals, but our main goal for today is to give you a fundamental understanding of the workflow and approval process tools that are available in Salesforce. These tools are available to you today. They're point and click, very easy to use tools. and think about how you can use those. And what we hope for you to walk out of this session with is at least one idea of a business process that you can automate using the concepts that we're going to talk about today. From an objectives perspective, Raj is going to give you some insight into some of the recent release enhancements for workflow and approval processes. So in Winter 10, we had a lot of great things that came out relative to these features, and he's going to cover that with you. We're also going to give you an understanding of how to build and execute workflow. So we're going to build a very simple workflow. Mark's also going to take you back and show you kind of under the covers when he does his case study what some of that workflow and approval process looks like, so you can actually get an idea of, in the application, how does it look when it's fully configured. And then we want to give you some tips and tricks on how to effectively manage workflow and approval processes. So for those of you that are administrators in the room, there are some certain things that you can do to more effectively manage those, and we're going to give you some insight into some tools that are being used to do that. And then specifically, we're going to share with you a use case of a business process that has been automated end-to-end in Salesforce. It's a very powerful story, but again, what we hope that you can take away from it, while this is a story related to a specific customer, what we hope that you can take away is applying the fundamental principles that we're going to share with you to one of those business processes that you jotted down on your neighbor's arm. So on the stage with me today, I have Rajaram. He is a senior product manager with Salesforce.com for our workflow and approval feature. Thank you for joining us. And I also have Mark Silber. Mark is an IT architect at Qualcomm. You've probably seen his banner. You've probably seen him downstairs. At this point, you've probably seen his pores. So great story, though. Qualcomm is a very compelling customer, a very successful customer, and he's going to share with you a specific business case that they've automated. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Raja.
Thanks, Tiffany. It's great. Hello, guys. Good evening. Hope you guys are having fun so far and chattering about the new things you have this year in Salesforce. I'm really happy to be here on stage, especially with our true heroes, customers such as Mark, who's here to share their experiences with technology with you guys. And it's kind of personal for me because it's good to see how your feature, which you have worked on, is being highlighted. So thank you, Mark. So that's it. As Tiffany said, I'm the product manager for workflow and approvals. And in the next few minutes, I want to talk about workflow and approvals in general and what's there in Salesforce, and also spend most of the time, hopefully not talking, but demoing what's available in the latest release. So quick check. How many of you have heard or created workflow rules or any of those things in? Wow, that's great. Almost all. That's great. So, well, then you might not necessarily enjoy the next 3 slides. But they did. There were a few who didn't raise their hand, so this is for them. But anyway, so I've been told to summarize what workflow is in 1 slide, which is hard to do, but this is what I came up with. What is workflow in general? Well, it is essentially a definition of a set of rules which you define. And the purpose is to take timely actions. The actions can be many things, like notifying and things like that. But the purpose is to pass information, documents, or tasks across different participants. And the participants can be different people in your company, or your customers, people outside your organization, or in some instances, those participants can also be other third-party systems in your company. And the whole intent is to automate a part or a complete process. So that's the 1 slide of what workflow in general is. But why does it matter? I just want to make sure that I spend a little bit of time on this because it's very important that I communicate to you the importance of any workflow technology and also highlight some of the capabilities of workflow, and you will see how Mark is actually leveraging these things and some of the salient features of workflow which actually lets him makes him successful. So the first things, there are 3 things typically comes in my mind. The first thing is, what are you trying to do? First, you're trying to define the processes, key business processes within an organization. To a lot of people, just having a place to define the process itself is big. The second is to define the rules or whatever the technology that automate the process. Well, what are the pain points are you trying to address? First is improved efficiency. We all know that automation of any process almost always takes away the unnecessary steps or manual tasks and saves time. The second is process improvement. When you automate a process, over time, you can actually look at how it's running and get information back and try to push it back to improve your process. So if you have an automation of a process over time, it gives you the ability to improve that and make it more efficient. The next is better process control. Once you have an automated process in your organization, guess what? They are standardized processes across everybody, right? And you'll see how Mark shows you how it has helped them in this area. And any good workflow tool will provide you, or should provide you, a good audit trail capability, right? So these two together helps you have better process control. And the second is my favorite here, which I want to talk to you about, is flexibility. As I said, key is process improvement. But what good is a technology out there which lets you gather the information, but doesn't let you easily feed that back into the process to make it easier, faster? Great, you find that this is taking longer time and you know how to improve it, but you need to have the tool that lets you make that changes very rapidly without writing any code. So that's where a good workflow technology will come in mind. So what are the benefits you gain? The first is reducing risks, right? So this is especially true for approval processes where you document, you automate, and you audit trail. That's automatically reduce your risk. And this is especially true for this era of SOX compliance and things like that. Second is lowering costs. I mean, automation, as I said, always reduce your cost because you have removed unnecessary steps and also eliminated the long, laborious manual process. And the third is it also improves customer service. When you have consistent processes, you can predict how things happen much easier. And also you can take proactive tasks to improve the customer service. You will see some of the things I'm going to show you in this area as well. So, I mean, I guess I don't need to talk about why workflow, but these are some of the key things to keep in mind about whenever choosing any workflow technology. All right, so I've said all these things about, all this great, but what does Salesforce provide? Well, the first thing I want to share with you is, again, promise you just 2 more slides, is workflow rules. So workflow rules are essentially the declarative point-and-click tool way of capturing key business events which happen in your company. All the key things happen you want to capture, like an opportunity just got created, or a case got created, or an expense report was submitted. These are the key things which happen in your business process. You want to capture that. And we provide you a simple click, 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 literally 2-step way of capturing this business process, business events. And we provide you varying levels of sophistication of what type of event. They're not just simple, when this happens, do this. You can leverage the filters. You can leverage the formulas. How many of you have heard or used formulas? So you can leverage all the things like the spanning formulas where you can go 5 levels up. You can leverage all those things. So you can build a little bit more sophistication in the types of rules you're trying to capture. And the actions you take are essentially, email alerts and tasks which let you notify the right people at the right time with the right information. Field updates are great when you automatically update fields on the record. And web services is also great for any out-of-the-box integration with any third-party systems you have. So these are the kind of actions possible. So the other aspect is approvals. Many of you probably had to go through an approval process to come here, right? It's a very common use case in any organization to have and implement an approval process, expense reports, PTO, you name it. Again, similar to the workflow rules, Salesforce provides you a very easy point-and-click way of defining what these rules are. Again, you have varying levels of sophistication we can implement. A simple 1-step process or a hierarchical process where you want to go from one manager to another manager, so on and so forth. So we have varying levels of sophistication here. So that's the approval processes and the workflow rules put together will kind of help you automate a lot of your business processes. All right, this is where the slides end. So I want to spend the next few slides focusing on some of the latest features in the Winter 10 release. So to highlight what I'm going to talk about, this is a simple use case. All I'm saying is I want to send an email alert to a case contact, and this is only for platinum accounts, when a case is closed to gather feedback. Let's see how we can do this. So to do that, so I'm logging to my org, and workflow is under setup, workflow and approvals, and workflow rules. So I'm going to create, and we are saying that you want to send an email to when a case is closed. So we're going to pick the object, which is the case object. I'm going to say, let's see, case close follow up. I'm going to leave the evaluation criteria to the default. But we're saying when the case is closed, it's very simple. Say case closed equals true. And what we're saying is, if you look at the use case, we want to say only about platinum accounts. So the filter, you can see that you can also pull up the parent account in a filter. I think I have a field called SLA. There it is. And I'm going to say equals platinum. So that's it. In just a matter of few clicks, the key business process is capturing the fact that when a case is closed for a platinum account, you want to do something. Let's do that. And when you say next, this is where you want to take all the actions. Well, again, in interest of time, you can create actions here, or I have an existing action. Again, actions are kind of reusable entities across many, across rules and approvals. So this is where they are. So I have case closed follow up. There you go. And this is because when you are sending out an email alert, you can actually send it to a related contact on the account. So because case has a contact, if you look at the case object as a contact, we'll send it to the contact. So this is another example where the notification is not just for people within your company, but also people outside the company. So once I activate it, now this rule is active, right? So let's try to see how this works. So all I need to do is, I have this case open. I'm just going to, so before I say that, you can see this is the email address of the contact. I'm going to close case. The status is closed. Solution details. Stop. So I had to take that shot, sorry. So once I save that, the workflow should have kicked in, and I should have gotten an email here. Let me refresh there. There you go. By the way, I'm Batman. So here you can see, this is the case I just closed, and I got an email. So this is a great example where you have a process which lets you automate a simple business common case of, okay, some of your key customers you want to make sure how the experience was, to send them an email and say, okay, please tell us now how you get an email. So can somebody tell what's fishy about this? I'm not too sure if people realize there's something fishy about this. Yes?
I don't think I saw where you set up the email.
So the email alert is I selected an existing action. This is the email alert where I have again, interest of time, I just already had an email alert configured. I could have created a new one. But anybody?
Well, for one thing, you didn't say prior to a certain date, because wouldn't it automatically send it to that account?
Well, no. I mean, you could do that, but that's not the case I implemented.
So I think the big thing there is this is existing functionality. So why are you showing this now?
I can't get over this mark. But anyway, so it's true. This is actually released 3 releases back. But why am I showing you this? Anybody wants to take a shot at this? Anybody? Because the answer is right here on this page. Anybody notice something different? I'll give you a hint. Take a look at this. As you can see, it's from me. This is some of the things we found out from people like, if you are a call center agent, you're sending out emails to people outside the company, the way it works is currently the from address of all email alerts are set to the email address of the agent working on the case. That means you're sending it out as your email addresses. So what typically people want to do is say something like support@acme.com. So that is a new capability in the winter release where you now, for email alerts, you can override the from address of all email alerts. So for example, this is the from address of this. So how many of you ever heard of the feature called org-wide email addresses? Well, this is what it leverages. So I can go to the email alert page, And quickly, looking at the bottom, this is a new required field. By default, it is set to the current users. And you can send it to any verified automated email addresses. In the next release, we also support the ability to send it to a default workflow user, so that if you want to have automated emails from people within your company, and you don't want to say who the person was, you can set it to the default workflow user. So that's something coming up. And to prove that it works, I'm just going to close one more case. Say, stop using IE, especially 6. So I do that, and I refresh. You'll see that it's all changed to the from address. So this is one of the, if you look at the ID Exchange, this is probably one of the top 10 ideas requested from customers. Like, I don't want our employees' email to be sent to everybody else outside the company, whether it is auto-response rules through when you want to send an email to the lead email address, whichever. I don't want our employees' email addresses to be sent out. I want it somebody else. And each company has some kind of an info@acme.com or a support@acme.com. That's what they want to set. So this will provide you the ability to do that. So that is the feature in the winter. So again, these slides will be available later. This is like a summary slide of what it is. It's very simple. Create and verify an augment email address and set it up, and you're done. So the next feature I'm going to talk about is my favorite, or my current favorite feature, is the process visualizer. How many of you ever heard of the process visualizer? How many of you have played with it and experienced it? Cool. So we all really love approval processes, but at the same time, it was 2 years back, and it's good for what it was, but it was kind of hard for anybody to understand what approval process looks like. It's very hard to understand. If you talk about a process, the first thing people come to mind is a Visio diagram or a flow chart. And translating that into a long text is not the most ideal way. And it also had some it blocked us from innovating even more because of the limitations of a text-based representation of a process. So that's where Process Visualizer is where we invest a lot of time in going to a more visual way of designing a process. So it allows you to understand the process better, what the structure looks like, who are the people involved, and things like that. So before I go into something, I have to say this. How many of you knew that there was actually a beta version of the Process Visualizer? One person. How many did you guys comment on the Process Visualizer? Beta? Anyway. So to me, even though I think those people aren't here, but I want to give them a huge shout out loud for thanks, because it was amazing what the feedback we got from the Process Visualizer beta from using the comments on the ID Exchange. And this is something I'm going to continue to go forward, where from the tool itself, you're going to have a link to the ID Exchange where you can post your comments and say, I don't like this, Raja, fix this, or, oh, this is great, whichever is fine, which is great. The reason is some of the things like the printable view, which basically one of the most important aspects of an approval process when we talked to admins was, I need a way of printing this process out. It is my documentation tool, and there is no way of doing it. And that was one of the reasons we put out in beta mode, actually. And it was great for us because ID Exchange kind of consolidated the fact that that was the most important feature. So that is the next thing we worked on, is when we went GA, which is currently, you have extend capabilities largely based on your comments on the ID Exchange. So thank you very much. So to do that, I have a worldwide campaign budget approval process, which is a long 7-step process with different people involved. So there are a lot of issues with this. I'll tell you what it is as I'm doing the demo. So click on the view diagram button. That launches you a window which basically brings up a visual representation of what this process is. So there are all aspects of this I want to show. First is, process is great, but at the same time, if you have a longer process, it's hard to understand. So we built in the zoom capabilities, which can zoom, and we also have these capabilities so that you can see aspects of the process you cannot see. But more importantly, this is a printable view. It lets you view the diagram in an annotated manner but at the same time, we have footnotes at the bottom which tells you what is. So what are the actions, where are they, what are they? And if you look at this process, which is great, but there is no way to find out what are the actions, who are the recipients of the email alerts, what are the field updates, it's impossible. If you want to do that, I have to go down, this still doesn't have, I still have to click, there's too many clicks to get information out. So we added a find feature. So if you want to find out if Mark is involved, you just type, we'll find out the search, and you can see Mark is involved. Or you want to see where Bruce is involved, same thing. But at the same time, we wanted a complete view of this available to the administrator. So we can actually say, not just Bruce is involved as an approver, but also to see if Bruce is involved as a recipient of an email alert. So it gives you capability of, if you're a seasoned admin, if you're finding out how is this process used, who are the people involved, what is there, and the find will come to your benefit a lot. So that's the process visualizer. So, and again, this is out of beta right now. It's generally available. There's also a sneak peek into what's coming up in the next version of the process visualizer in the roadmap session with Mary Scotton on Friday morning. So please go there to see if you want to see what else is coming in the process visualizer. So with that, I'll stop talking and hand it over to Mark. Thanks.
So before we jump in, I guess the important thing to know here is that every release that comes out, there's new features, and as I saw the kind of hands raised there, not everybody's aware of everything. The release notes are gigantic, but Process Visualizer, very cool feature. It looked like maybe 3 people knew it existed. I don't know how many people had approval processes, but one of the goals of today is for you guys to walk out of here with some actionable things. I think one of those things is, as you attend the rest of your sessions, try to pull out those nuggets, right? So you just learned about Process Visualizer, take your one little note and go, okay, next time I do a process, at least now I know I can do it I can see it in a diagram, which is great. So thank you for that. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about Qualcomm. I think you guys have seen the logo enough. We've been a customer for a while. We're a decent-sized Salesforce customer. We absolutely love the technology. We continue to grow. I think the key here for us is that we use just about every piece of functionality that Salesforce has ever released. And in fact, I think we push hard on all of the functionality. So we are big contributors, I'm not going to use the word whiners, about new functionality and new features and why is this like this?
I would use whiners.
No, not at all. So Tiffany is our customer success manager, so I guess that's fair. I never whine. We use a lot of AppExchange applications, but I guess what I wanted to highlight here, and I don't think this is accurate, so I think this changes every day, but we're saying 250 custom objects. I think there's actually more than that. And there's 6,000 reports and 500 workflows. So I'd like to say that I built all those, but in reality, I don't think I've built many of those. We have a lot of our administrators, a lot of our leads are actually building that, but that's a lot of workflow. So one of the things we're actually going to talk about today is a little bit about organization. So I know Tiffany is a very organized person and wanted me to be here exactly on time. I think in Salesforce, as you build out functionality and as you build configuration, I don't think everybody knows how you can actually organize some of that stuff. So certainly when you get to the 500 number, it's pretty hard to go back and find sometimes that specific workflow. I think it gets hard when you get 20 or 30 sometimes.
So Mark,
yes.
Just to let you know, that 500 is going to be more very soon. So you can talk to me later about that.
Okay. Oh, you mean about the limits?
Yes. So
Yeah.
we are
So
generously increasing the limits of the number of workflow roles.
Yeah. So there are some secret things that you can do when you whine too to get those lifted.
No, Mark never whines to me. So.
I never whine. And then we have a lot of integration. So one of the things we talked about, in Russia talked about was, one of the outputs of workflow is outbound messaging. So I don't know how many people take advantage of that feature, but we have Salesforce as an integral part. It is actively sending outbound messages to other business applications at Qualcomm. So again, we use just about everything. So the other thing I want to talk about is Qualcomm is made up of a lot of different divisions. We actually have more than one instance of Salesforce. I won't go into details there. But what I'm going to focus on today is our QES division. We'll call it Qualcomm Enterprise Services. So this is our one division that I think is more traditional, more like a regular kind of company. They sell things. These things get installed. We sell services. We have applications. We do support. We do sales. We do marketing, all within this one division. If you looked at Qualcomm as a whole, we have a lot of support users. We're an engineering company. But QES, very, very, think about QES, kind of its own little company. So they do transportation and logistics. So if you ever see those big trucks with the little satellite dish or the little dome on top, that's actually our technology. Inside the cab is information so that the drivers and dispatchers can communicate. But I guess the big key here is that they leverage Salesforce as part of their kind of DNA. So everything they do from a sales and a marketing and a service perspective is all within Salesforce. But what I'm going to show you today is it extends beyond that. It kind of goes into operations. So all the things that go around supporting customers, onboarding customers, all of that is actually managed throughout Salesforce. So it continues to evolve and continues to grow. So what I want to talk about was something that I'm sure never happens to any of the people out here. But this is just a sample of some of the processes that this business unit has to deal with every day, right? And I think everybody does. I mean, anybody that has customers has some of these processes, right? You have to bring them on board. You have to set them up. You have to, configure their products. You certainly have to support their products. Hopefully, you don't have to collect from them, but sometimes you do. So these are all things. These are all big processes that I think affect everybody. And what people sometimes fail to realize is a lot of this can all be automated in Salesforce. So again, you think of Salesforce as opportunity management, activity management, case management, whatever. Think beyond that and think process, right? So one of the things that we did then was, I jumped ahead. So that's the problem with animation in your slides. You get a little finger happy. So some of the things we've done, we've taken some of these processes and we've built automation. So, a process can be something very, very small and very, very simple, a single thing. But what you kind of see here is a little bit bigger than that. So things like electronic signatures and that process, that's actually an AppExchange partner. Or requesting a sales order. So, Oracle integration is still being built. In the meantime, it was emails going back and forth between sales and operations. Hey, create this, do this. Some of the things are very specific to Qualcomm. But new customer data, new processes. So the one that I think we've seen some tremendous benefit for, and the one I'm going to show you today, is around contract requests. So in a perfect world, the sales rep would have all the tools and technology so that you'd never have to request a unique contract. Everybody sold at list price. No one ever asked for discounts. Terms and conditions were 100% the same for every customer you ever sold to. Never happens.
That would be nice.
Yeah, exactly. But it never happens. I don't think it's ever happened in the history of this particular division. So what they decided to do was take this process and automate it. So the process of requesting a contract, and some people might think about that different, could be like what we talked about, discounting or pricing approval. So it incorporates that. It incorporates the terms and conditions and all the products and all the specific things that go into setting up a very unique process. So just like most processes, it suffers from these kind of four things. And I think you can take that, and if you take one thing, is you can take these things and probably apply them to almost every process you have. Very labor-intensive, lots of email. No one knew where it was, and that generated more email. Wait a minute, I submitted this last week. Where is it? I need my contract done. And so emails, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then no metrics. So how do you know you have a good or bad process if you can't measure it? How long did it take to get from step A to step B and then to step C and ultimately to get my customer set up? And for Qualcomm, what's important is until our units are installed in vehicles and those units are messaging, we're not getting the revenue from those messages. So the longer it takes to onboard and ship and install, the more deferred that revenue is. So obviously it has a financial impact as well. So what we did was kind of listed out some of the things that we wanted to do with this process, but this is the end game. This is what it's done for us. That all of the information that we need to generate a very unique contract, including all of the approvals, is set up. It uses EchoSign as the last mile, so we do electronic signature. It measures the time at each step. And in fact, what I'm going to show you today has already been enhanced. So we're tracking stages today, kind of how long did it take to go from here to here. And that works if you have a very serial process. So we actually developed a bit of customization that we call time and state. And that tracks how long was it in a particular state, regardless of how often it moved back and forth. So I don't have that to show today, but that's actually now in production. It's linked to a lot of different things. So to give you some idea of volume, so 850 contracts in the last 90 days have gone through this process. So we're not just talking about new customers. It could be amendments. It could be all kinds of things that go through that. And so really what we've seen is an improvement. So we've seen an improvement in turnaround time. There's a bunch of, say, non-tangible improvements that you now know where your processes are working or not working. So a couple more things, and I'm going to jump in and show you what this looks like. So I'd like to say I built this. I think I probably had some ideas about some of the stuff, but I'm not the one who actually built it. So I certainly could have showed you a very simple process, but I think it's important for people to realize that, you know, with the exception of the very bottom cloud, this is point and click. So this entire process I'm going to show you is point and click configuration. We've got a couple little minor things at the bottom that deal with Apex. But it's a pretty big process. It's a pretty big process.
I have to ask you this, Mark.
Yes.
So you said there are over 500 rules, and this alone has all these number of things. How long did it take to implement? Are we talking like days and weeks or years or months?
No, it took me 3 hours.
Come on.
No,
I know you're lying.
So I think I told you. See, you weren't
Actually,
listening.
it is
I said I
3
didn't
hours.
build it.
Yeah, I was working 24 hours on Mark.
I'd say in effort. So obviously, you can measure things in duration or effort. Duration was about our effort. It was a couple of weeks worth of heads down work to build this out. I think duration, it's evolved over time. So from when they started to when it went live was maybe a month and a half, and it continues to evolve. So that's another kind of key takeaway. Just because you implement a process doesn't mean it never changes, right? In order to be effective, you should always be reevaluating your processes and say, how can I make them better? How can I do this better, not as a process, but how can I do it even better in Salesforce?
It just took you 6 weeks to get started, and
yeah, no, it was 3 hours. It took me 3 hours. That's what I was going to say. So what I was going to do here is jump into an org and just kind of show you a couple things. So this is just a demo org that I have set up. It's a sandbox from Salesforce, or for our instance, I've cleansed it, so you don't see all of our proprietary company data. But functionality-wise, it's pretty much there. But what I wanted to show you was this. So I'm just going to go and bring up this customer, and I did want to show you one thing. As you can tell, we have a lot of related data. And not only that, but what you're not seeing is data related to the data that's related to the account. So a lot of custom objects. Remember I said, 250 custom objects. I think it's more than that. That was just a rough count. So what I want to show you was this. So I wanted to go into the contract request and just show you a little bit about what that is. So contract request is related. It's related to an opportunity. It's related to an account. I'm going to show you this. Oops. I'm just going to kind of show you what the screen might look like. So just like every other object, it collects data, but more importantly, it kind of puts it through a process. So for us, I wanted to show you, let me go back to my account for a second. I'm just going to show you what it looks like to create a new contract request. So this is kind of my key. So as the IT architect at Qualcomm, I think one of my big things is I help to define kind of standards for how we build and develop Salesforce. And so just like Tiffany is very organized and wants me here on time, I think in real life I'm not so organized. In Salesforce, I'm kind of a stickler, right? So, when you build a workflow or when you build record types, one of the things I love to see is that you describe the record type, right? Don't just leave it blank. Make them self-defining. So if I were to look at this and I never used the application before, I go, well, a developer agreement. Well, okay, I'm going to use that if I'm doing a third-party developer agreement, right? So tip number one, make your record types somewhat meaningful. So let's just say I'm doing a developer agreement. That's probably one example. Some of this stuff doesn't make a lot of sense, but what I wanted to show you was this. There's really, 15 fields here that I'm going to ask the user to collect for this particular process, for this record, okay? But what I wanted to show you was this. If I went and did I'm trying to think of a good one, a master contract and schedule. What I wanted to show you was that you're getting a completely different experience. So I have kind of the same 10, 15 fields at the top, but now I have this section in the middle. I have things like requested date. I have all this data about who the approvers need to be, about the hardware, about the software, about the maintenance. So the key there, and just remember, this is point-and-click configuration. So record types, driving page layouts, making it simple for the end user. A lot of data, but at least they know as they're going through this process that all the fields on the screen are only applicable to this particular kind of agreement. That's all done through point and click. And then other things like this. So I know everybody who is in sales would probably say that, I need this done now. So let me see if that's all I need to do. Let me pick a couple things here. A lot of things with dependent lists. All right. So let's see. So I need this done today. Oops, I can't get this done today. Hang on. What did I miss? So the point here is you're kind of guiding the user through, ensuring that the form is completed properly. Remember, no code here. This is just point click. So a little validation rule. But the key here is, yes, it's a validation rule, but it's telling the user exactly what they need to do to fix the problem. So remember that as your building process, self-document, use friendly errors, don't use codes, don't use shortcuts, don't use acronyms. Assume that the people using the application don't know how to do this. Okay? So that's that contract request process. I wanted to show you one more thing here. So I'm going to jump into setup, and I wanted to show you workflows and approvals. So I talked about organization. So contract request. We talked about workflows and how many workflows we have at Qualcomm. So this particular process has, I don't know what that is, 15, 20 workflows. But again, one of the things I'd like you guys to note is that by looking at this without ever having seen this process as an administrator, you should be able to go in and understand what each of these things do without having to drill into every one. How many people here are administrators, by the way? Phew. Okay, good. So I was talking to people who don't know what I'm talking about. I'd feel really silly. So the other thing is that, I don't know that, so I see a lot of orgs, right? So we have a lot of orgs at Qualcomm. We do a lot of custom processes. What people don't realize is that you can do views on almost everything, even your configuration. So just like you might create an account view, right? My accounts, my current accounts, my strategic accounts. Do the same thing for your workflows. Do the same thing for your email alerts. Do the same thing for your approval processes. Because when you get a lot, it's hard to kind of pull them back out. So you don't want to be looking through 100 things in a list. Build views, right? So that's another tip I wanted to share with you guys today. And so just to prove that that is true, so you can kind of see the same thing. So I go, all right, show me my agreement alerts versus my contract request. Right? So very easy to kind of collect the data that is maybe in different things, different areas across the process, and pull it back together so you can organize it. Let me jump back to here. So one of the things that I talked about was this. So when you're building workflows, there's a couple different tricks to get that data grouped together. One is when you build workflow, you can certainly say, okay, build a view and show me all the workflow where the object is X. But as Salesforce becomes more and more independent, you've got objects that are related to other objects, that doesn't always work. So you can use some intelligent naming. So you can see I call these conrec, contract request. And so my view that I built really just says, hey, show me all the workflow rules that are in this object, or have this part of their name, right? So it could really be an account workflow dealing with this process, but I'd still get to look at it in this view. So hopefully that makes sense to you that are admins. So just to go back, when we talk about workflow rule best practices, so I'll talk about this.
This is you?
What's that?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So again, a couple more. So we talked about organization. So Qualcomm, very email-centric company. I don't know if all you guys have that same volume, but let's say I get at least 200 emails a day, of which I probably have to look at most of them. One of the things we've done, and we'll take full blame for that, is first time you build a workflow, you're going to say, at every step, I want this person to know. I want the account manager to know. I want the sales team to know that this thing just happened, and then this next thing just happened, and then the thing after that just happened. And so that's great. You can do it. But the problem is your teams stop looking at it. So now all of a sudden that stuff goes into junk mail, not junk mail, let's call it a filter folder. Yeah, never junk mail. So the key is start light. Don't give them emails for every bit of your process, right? Pick the key events that they want to know about. And in fact, don't give them all the data in an email. If possible, ask them to go back into the application. So this unique event just happened, this very important thing. You need to go back into Salesforce and go get the rest of it. I'm not going to give you an email with every field in the contract request. We talked about regularly reviewing new features. So that's kind of my full-time job, but I know it's hard for some people to keep up. But scan the notes and pick a couple things you think are you're going to want to implement. And then design and document. So sketch it on a napkin. Sketch it on your neighbor, like Tiffany said. It doesn't matter. With the process visualizer, when you're talking about approvals, you can almost kind of model it and then go back and see how it looks visually. That's kind of a neat thing to do as well. And then for those of you that have sandboxes, obviously that's the recommended way to do development. And then that's it. So,
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
No, I'm kidding. So Mark and Raja, thank you very much. That's a great use case for the power of workflow and approval processes. So as we wrap up, I just want to leave you with a couple of key closing thoughts, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So if anybody does have any questions, please use the microphone in the center of the room. But if you don't feel like getting up and walking over there, it's too far or whatever, you don't like your voice on a microphone, kind of like mine, just raise your hand and we'll just be sure to repeat the question. So in summary, basically what I want to do is just cover a few things here. Use workflow and approvals to create closed-loop business processes. And what I mean by that, it's very, very powerful to be able to send an email or a task to someone as a result of an activity that happens on a record. What's even more compelling is to be able to get that information back into Salesforce. So sure, I can send Mark an email all day long and say, Mark, hey, please go update our ERP system with this information, but I have no way of knowing if Mark actually completed that task. So to the extent that you can, and Mark just kind of made this point, create that closed-loop business process in Salesforce whereby you may be taking some type of action, you may be calling out a system, you may be calling or sending a task to a person, but also have that activity that they're required to complete, that information sent back, so there's a record in Salesforce that it was actually done. That'll really help drive adoption of that process within your organization. The other thing, Raja hit on this at the very beginning in terms of talking about the benefits of workflow. It ensures compliance. It makes things a lot easier for the people in your life because they're required to kind of do things a standard way. They know what to expect. Mary's not doing it one way, and Tiffany's doing it another, and Joe's doing it another. We're all doing it the same way, and the system's invoking those rules. So it really is a very powerful tool to create those efficiencies and create that standardization within your organization. Your business processes are going to evolve. So as the landscape of your industry changes, as your business itself changes, maybe you launch a new product or you acquire a new company, the business processes that you're managing today are going to evolve over time. So as a best practice, it's best for you to have those critical business processes especially documented. You have a defined business owner for those processes that's charged with going back and reviewing those processes over time as your industry or your business changes. And finally, Salesforce offers a ton of tools and resources that are available to you that will really help you automate and streamline your processes. So if you take a look at that list that you guys created in the very beginning and you say, you know what, how would I actually go about doing that? We offer to you a whole slew, is that a word, of resources that you can use. On the Developer Force website at force.com/developer, you can enter keywords both on the community and on the developer site. Enter something like workflow or approval processes as your keywords. You will be returned back a ton of feature-rich content that will help you as you develop these processes. You'll have implementation guides. You might have configuration best practices. You'd have access to examples of processes that other companies are automating. Within the community especially, you can collaborate with other people. You know, maybe you can even chatter within your organization of, you know, who has the process they need to automate. Whatever, there's a ton of information that's out there for you, so use those resources. Collaborate with your end users. Find out where their process pain points are, and then use the information that's available to you to help get you started. The other thing is help and training in the application. We are going through an overhaul internally of our help and training portal, but there's still a lot of great information that's out there that's available for you right within the application as well. So certainly I would encourage you to do that. So while I have a seated audience, I'm just going to close with saying, please take a moment to complete the online survey. Salesforce as a company, we're trying to support Mayor Newsom's effort to be one of the most eco-friendly cities in the United States. So by doing so, we have moved our survey process to an online process. There are survey stations that are set up in the Moscone main hall, but you can also go online to your attendee portal. I'm telling you guys, please take a moment to fill out the survey. We use this feedback. I read the feedback from the session last year, and I made some changes to the session format and the topics that we covered based on that feedback. So we really do read it. We take it to heart. We want to make sure that you guys are getting the most value out of these sessions, especially the 4:45 and the afternoon sessions. So help me out. Please fill out the survey. Let us know what we did right. Let us know where we can improve things, and that would really help things a lot. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions, but if everybody's really anxious to get going, we'll see you later.
And help us beat Portland as well.